Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer, here with Mike Gallagher. Gallagher, you've got a great background today, ready for all the
Yep.
bozos over at the circus. We'll pile them in the
Yep.
clown car for you guys watching at home. Hopefully get you prepared for this 4-game slate. We think it's going to stick at 4 games, but there is a chance that this final game tonight on NBA TV, Golden State and Denver is under some pressure to have enough players. I think they're in an okay spot. They need one of their 4 questionable players to be able to be active to play the game tonight, to have 8 players and be able to play the game tonight. Otherwise, we could have another game go way of the postponement. But Mike, before we get into it, how are you doing this afternoon?
Feeling great. Yeah, feeling been sleeping enough and working sleep. But I like to work and I like to sleep now, so I'm doing good. Yeah, as you mentioned, we got basically Barton, Bol, Campazzo, Corneli, Jokic, JaMychal Green, and Reed, the 7 guys. So as you said, we need one more of these: Gordon, Morris, Rivers, and Konkar to play. So some background on those injuries. Monte Morris has played through this knee injury for years. He took some time off, didn't get surgery. He thought that 10 weeks off would kind of heal him. Apparently it hasn't. We saw him miss the last game, didn't even really warm up. Aaron Gordon's hamstring's been bothering him, as I've said countless times. Same bad hamstring he tore in the bubble. Hurt it again in January. Obviously now he aggravated it. Wasn't really doing much jogging in his pregame workout routine, so I think he may not have a chance to play. Don't know what's up with Austin Rivers and don't have much on Conchar, so we'll see there. But yeah, it's also worth noting too that the Nuggets G League team, there's really no G League teams in Denver. They're G League teams in Michigan, so they don't have the old, let's call Austin the Austin Spurs and get somebody on the horn here. So yeah, we'll see. They got to have somebody play. We'll see what's Austin Rivers. It sounds pretty minor. He played pretty big minutes in the last game. No mention of it post game, so he's probably the most likely of the guys to play.
Yeah, and if you are tuning into that game tonight, assuming it does take place, make sure to look out for courtside. King GPP bro himself, Adam Levitan, is supposed to be in attendance. I assume with CSU Ram, because even though Levitan won $250K, I can't imagine he can afford a courtside ticket with how he spends his money. So I imagine CSU is behind this whole thing, but give them a check out. Hopefully he's got his Establish the Run hoodie on to get some branding recognition back, as he's been talking about on the podcast. On the opposite side of the Denver game for Golden State, let's just tackle them while we're here talking about the game. They get Jordan Poole back from health and safety protocols, so they're actually kind of getting in the healthier kind of side of things. How do you expect that to shake things out? They're still without Draymond Green, so it's not exactly like fully loaded here, but how do you expect Golden State to tackle things tonight?
Yeah, worth noting that Jordan Poole got a workout in on Tuesday, was also expected to get a workout in on Wednesday. So they are trying to ramp him up, much like Andrew Wiggins. They got a practice in, got a workout in, and you see he played 32 minutes, got up to speed pretty quickly. So I'll expect something pretty similar. He was on the bench in the last game, so really no signs to think that he's not going to be, maybe he's 85%, something like that, but it should be closer to 150. To put it that way. So, yeah, I think it should be good. Obviously, you're going to see Gary Payton Jr.'s minutes cut down, and Steve Kerr said it'll be kind of a team approach with how to replace Draymond. So we saw Toscano Anderson. We saw some minutes from Otto. We saw a lot of Iguodala, kind of secondary ball handling and initiating, especially late in the game. When their offense was a little bit disjointed, they kind of had a really slow start, and Golden State kind of roared back. But, yeah, I would expect Poole to have pretty big minutes. They really like Kuminga. Kerr really talked him up. So I think Kuminga is still going to try to find minutes. Certainly won't be fantasy relevant.
Yeah.
But, that'll take a little luster off of Otto or Iggy if you wanted to. It's a 4-game slate.
I do think they'll try to find some minutes for Kuminga still, but I think Jordan Poole's return, really the guys that it hurts most, I think are Gary Payton II for sure. Like I think his minutes could come way, way down, like back into it wouldn't surprise me if he was only playing like 12 to 16, something like that. And Chiozza, I think, goes away, obviously. And then I think there's a chance that Kuminga's minutes get hurt here, just because I think if you think through how they're going to replace Draymond Green, what they really need to replace from Draymond, you can't replace Draymond's defense. Like, that's impossible. What you really need is you need the offensive facilitation. And really the guys who can do that for them are Juan Toscano Anderson and Andre Iguodala. Those are the 2 guys that they can kind of, run a lot of offense through, have the cutters kind of going around that they usually do, Poole and Steph. And what they don't need as much of is like one-on-one isolation kind of scoring. And so Kuminga, just with Poole and Wiggins and Steph all there, his role could take a bigger back seat. I'm sure they want to get him minutes and continue to develop him. They're so high on him, and what he's flashed so far has been really impressive, especially his strength as a young player getting to the rim. But I do think the minutes could come way down for him. I think Iguodala, Porter Jr., Toscano Anderson, I don't think those guys are impacted too much by Jordan Poole's return. I really think it's Gary Payton II, Chioza, and then maybe Kuminga a little bit more. If they remain committed to Kuminga, it could impact Porter Jr. and Iguodala. But I think Iggy's minutes are fairly tight range anyway. It's going to be low 20s most nights. Maybe he gets up in the mid 20s on occasion. I think Juan Toscano Anderson's going to be about the same, low to mid 20s. I think Porter is going to be about the same as they try to manage kind of all those guys through the season.
Yep, totally agree. And we should see. I thought Looney did an okay job, at least in the second half against.
Yeah, they don't have too many other options. I mean,
yeah.
It's pretty thin. So Looney, as long as he's not in foul trouble, will probably play as many minutes as he can handle up against Jokic, and they'll try to steal a few minutes here and there with other accommodations. But Jokic, without Draymond, they don't have a good option really. Like Looney is their best option by a wide margin, and then after that, there's really nobody. Jokic will cook Bielitsa, he'll cook any of the smaller guys. So, and you can't double him because he's such a good passer. So. We will see if the Warriors or if the Nuggets, can pull off back-to-back upsets here as they won this game against Golden State on Tuesday night. Okay, other COVID situations, health and safety protocols to talk through. I guess actually we should talk about the Nuggets in terms of like what things look like. I think from the DFS perspective, it's only a 4-game slate, so some of these guys are going to be in the mix. But generally, like if they have Jokic and Barton, they can run almost all of their offense through those two guys, and you can see really, really heavy usage rates from those guys. And then the secondary guys, Campazzo is probably the most relevant given the situation. But how do you think of some of these secondary guys in terms of whether they're viable tonight for Denver?
Yeah, I think Faca's minutes are really secure. Bones was his backup, and Malone said before the game that it was basically a no-brainer they were starting Faca because they like how he covered Steph, and he did a pretty good job. Yeah. So, I think Campazzo's minutes upside is really high, as high as it is. Like, basically, when we're making his minutes, and I haven't looked at it yet, I'm sure we already did, but I'd want to look at, like, where his career highs were as the high end, because he could play a ton, especially when the Warriors are going to try to push pace and play, won't be as good of a defense without Gary Payton, something for Jordan Poole, so better game environment for them. But, I mean, they're going to probably play Devon Reed a bunch.
He was signed to a third 10-day contract, so they do have him available. But it really comes down to these questionable guys and which guys, because Gordon and Morris are such huge ones, because if they can play, those guys soak up a lot of minutes, and then the rest of the guys, they piecemeal together. It's not really that different than before. If they can't play, like Jokic and Barton and Campazzo are the guys that they trust, and they're going to have to play a ton out there.
Even if Monte plays, I wouldn't be surprised if they just start Facu again, just because, again, this is a multiple-year thing for Morris. So, I obviously would not range him out at upper 30s high upside, but I still think even if Monte goes, I still think he can get to like 28, 29, 30.
Yeah, and this is the late game, so I don't know what kind of information we'll have in advance. So just be careful in terms of loading up on this game, because with these questionable tags, we really don't know. Okay, let's keep it moving on the health and safety protocols front. Washington, it sounds like we might get Bradley Beal and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope back. Bradley Beal is vaccinated apparently, which he had very open outward opposition to vaccines coming into the season, but the reporting has shown that he's vaccinated, which explains the quicker return. I was a little bit confused on that before, but it sounds like we might get Beal and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope back, which is much needed for a Washington backcourt that is very, very depleted.
Yeah, they started Denny Avdija, put him on Jimmy Butler before he got hurt, and thought he did a pretty good job. But obviously we saw the big Dinwiddie game that'll kind of go by the wayside. Bradley Beal has been working out in his own gym, so it should be pretty good conditioning. Well, as mentioned on the last show, that he could get quote standard minutes according to Unseld, so you can kind of pick up where he left off. Definitely keep an eye on him. Obviously, both these guys coming back would pretty much torpedo Cody Kispert and Denny Avdija, even if other guys are out or something happens. Like Avdija's minutes will still be pretty good because they're going to miss Harrell, but Yeah, the Bertans is also questionable too, so that could up the ups. That could really keep Gafford, who played 36 minutes in the last game, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So he's got a pretty big upside if he gets sustained. And they're going to need the size. I don't think they're going. Even if Bertans goes, like that's a tough ask to put him out there against all those bigs.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting spot for Washington guys, just because they might have the main guys, but they're so depleted with back end guys that you could see what you saw last time out, which is really condensed minutes for the main starters. So could be a pretty interesting spot from a DFS perspective. Mike and Andrew Wiggins will be talking about that on the premium DFS show tonight behind the paywall. All right, let's talk about Orlando, where they have just been ravaged all year long. We have one other injury to add now with Robin Lopez, who's been a little bit of a bright spot the last week or so for Orlando. I don't think Orlando is a spot that you're going to be attacking really heavily tonight from a DFS perspective, but what do things look like without Robin Lopez for them?
Yeah, and they're missing Asani Gravett, who got put in protocols mid-game.
That was strange.
Crazy. Same day, and Max Strus gets pulled during warmups. But so they're thin at guard. RJ Hampton's going to play a ton. Tim Frazier's going to play a pretty good amount. They're going to probably bring Freddie Gillespie in the mix for a decent amount of minutes. We know Schofield should play, pretty good bench minutes. Franz Wagner is just on another level right now, coming off a career high against the Bucks. Doing it again. Tough sell. People are probably going to chase that. I don't know if he could do it again. We saw him really struggle in the first 2 games against them. We saw Gary Harris play a silly amount of minutes, 37 without Gravett. So, yeah, pretty condensed here. So, definitely some major blowout risk, but some potential.
But the guard spots, specifically Hampton, should be pretty safe just because of the lack of depth on that roster. And Robin Lopez, they lose him, but they did get Mo Wagner back last game, so they can kind of just transition some of these minutes between Gillespie and Wagner and kind of make it all work. Yeah. So I'm not too interested in the Orlando bigs tonight. Let's talk about the Cavs. Really sad situation with Ricky Rubio being lost for the season, and he was playing so well. Later stages of his career, having such a good season and being one of the big spark plugs on the Cavs. They're without Darius Garland. They already lost Colin Sexton, Ricky Rubio. They have no guards. And I think this is one of the more interesting situations to watch from a starting lineup perspective in terms of how they try to approach this. What are your expectations? The lone, point guard, quote unquote, on the roster is now Kevin Pangos. But Denzel Valentine's had experience running offenses in second units in the past. You mentioned Isaac Okoro has been a player that they've been trying to improve his ball handling and command of the offense. How are they going to make up for the absence of Ricky Rubio in terms of just initiating and facilitating offense tonight?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. One, I think Okoro is going to take a big step forward as a ball handler. We saw in Summer League he was starting kind of as the co-facilitator with him and Broderick Thomas. He was more of an aggressive kind of attacking guard, which is what you want against Washington. So I think Okoro, if his conditioning is in good shape, I think he's going to offer, not smash upside, but I haven't seen his price yet, but I imagine it's pretty low. But I think his role is going to be really, really good. Can't do it on Pangos, man. He might start, but I just don't see his minutes getting bigger up there. You mentioned, I think the key here is Denzel Valentine. He's kind of been the initiator earlier in his career, Michigan State, and so on. So I think that those are the two guys, Okoro and Valentine would be the two guys I'm looking at on top of, Mobley could facilitate. They're going to dump the ball into him a lot. We've seen kind of take a page out of the Sixers books when you're missing all your guards, just throw the ball to Mobley and let him do his thing. So Mobley could be, offering a huge upside. Big necessity looked good in his return. We saw the minutes were pretty normal at 30. I thought he looked fine overall, ran pretty well, didn't look too winded. So, big upside for Mobley against a team that has given up some big lines to centers too. So,
do you think Valentine slides right in the starting lineup here? Is that your expectation?
I kind of think so. I just don't think he could start Pangos, man. I feel like that's just asking for trouble, right?
Yeah, it's tough. I'm torn because I kind of think you might start Pangos just to get through those minutes with the other guys on the floor that are really strong and keep Valentine in the second unit. But
I just think that if you're Washington and you have Bradley Beal on the floor or Dinwiddie on the floor, you'd want to just attack Pangos. Hunt. So I'd want to sneak him out of the first unit whenever I could.
Yeah, tricky spot. The good news for the Cavs in that front is that Washington's backcourt depth is depleted as well. So there are going to be some guys that are about Pangos's level in the rotation for Washington as well, kind of in the second unit too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Brooklyn, Kevin Durant, LaMarcus Aldridge. We got a lot of pieces back for Brooklyn tonight. What do we do with Brooklyn from a DFS perspective now? Because it's back to the days of, Harden is no longer by himself and pumping out 80 fantasy point games and different things like that. So what do you think the rotation looks like with Brooklyn getting a lot of pieces back? They're starting to get much, much healthier.
Yeah, so I think when we saw before this all happened, it was DeAndre Bembry starting with Bruce Brown's minutes severely cut down because they really leaned in on Bembry being their point of attack defender, which they may not need as much. Maybe they do go bigger. Maybe they start Blake or something. But I think they may be comfortable playing Nick Claxton. It's worth noting with LaMarcus that he had the cardiac issue, and then last week Steve Nash said they are going to be very careful with him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just sits out here. We'll see about that. But all these other fringe guys like David Duke Jr.'s back, he won't be a factor. And then James Johnson will come way down with Kevin Durant being basically a 4, cutting out his minutes. Bruce Brown will kind of go away quite a bit, I think. But obviously Harden's was absurd. He's looked awesome. I
think the minutes ceiling on Harden is similar. I think Patty Mills' minute ceiling might come down a little bit, but I also think they know that they've got Kyrie kind of on the horizon at some point. And I think once Kyrie is back for some of those road games, I bet you see Patty Mills sit some games, just because he's been playing so much of late.
Yeah.
So
terrible timing. Because they got 7
3-game
homestand,
a bunch of home games coming up, so you're not going to see a ton of Kyrie. But when you do, I would expect Patty Mills to take a break. Then they're playing Philadelphia. Philadelphia likely will get Shake Milton back tonight. I think that does 2 things. One, I think that probably keeps Tyrese Maxey in the starting lineup for good. He went to the bench for 1 game. And I think they just, they didn't love what they saw from that. They went back to him as a starter. But I think the idea of that was the bench unit needed some scoring. It didn't have Shake to kind of lead and initiate, and they could run Seth at the point. I think they can still accomplish those things with just heavier staggering between Seth and Tyrese. But with Shake back, they should have a little bit more bench depth. Those Tyler Johnson minutes go away. The ceiling on Yang and Korkmaz and those guys gets hit a little bit as well with Shake Milton back.
Yeah, and they added that, Maxey had missed some practice too, so they just thought it made a lot of sense that missed time, just keep his minutes down in that role. So I'd be shocked if he's not starting. But we no Tyler Johnson anyways with protocols. Doc Rivers out, man. What is it? 7 coaches are
it's a lot of coaches now.
It's freaking crazy, man.
Thankfully, it sounds like most of the coaches are vaxxed and boosted and whatnot. So hopefully we continue to run with no symptoms or minimal symptoms on the older guys, because old guys like me, we got to make sure we're taking care of our health.
Got to.
All right.
Yeah, anybody else be busy? We know that.
Anybody else we missed on the injury report that we want to talk through before getting out of here?
I don't think so. A pretty small slate today. I'm sure we'll get more later, and Wiggins and I will break it on.
Yeah.
I feel a pretty good feel for. There's a lot of edge. Like we're talking about Cleveland and Orlando. There's some edge there. I think there's a little bit of edge in Brooklyn, and Ed will be edge in Denver. It's a pretty fun little 4-game slate. I'm pumped for it later.
Awesome. Yeah, make sure if you have a subscription to Established Run's NBA DFS premium content to check out Mike and Andrew Wiggins behind the paywall today at 5:00 Eastern, breaking down this DFS slate, talking you through it. We also have deals going on, holiday specials going on if you are interested in subscribing to Established Run. So just go up to that subscribe button, check out the NBA products. You can see all the deals we have associated with discounted price tags on monthly packages, seasonal packages, props packages. If you want to do the props packages are only seasonal. There's no monthly or weekly exposure there. But if you want DFS from an in-season, weekly, or monthly, we've got big discounts. You can see the promo codes there on the screen to use at checkout. If you are not a subscriber and uninterested in paying for any of our work, could you at least click the like button, maybe even smash it if you'd like. That means click it really hard. Also, if you would consider subscribing to this YouTube page so you can get notifications whenever we go live, we'd really appreciate that. And it will continue to foster this free content that we're delivering to you guys Monday through Friday at 2:00. We will be back tomorrow, 2:00 Eastern, with the man, the myth, the legend, Justin Fan from Underdog Fantasy as well on the NBA side. He will be helping myself and Mike Gallagher break down the injuries as well. We look forward to seeing you guys then. Enjoy all the games tonight. We'll see you tomorrow.